Hi, everyone. Kate Bays here. I have a wonderful guest to share with you today. Lots of great information to share. Sertrice Grice, Chief Consulting Officer with Mattingly Solutions, joining me now. So excited to see you. So excited to talk with you and talk about how we made this connection and what you're doing. So we have a common connection, Dr. Victoria Mattingly, and she's doing a lot in the DEI space. And you've recently joined her team with Mattingly Solutions. So I just want to hear all about it. How did you get connected? Because you said you're in North Carolina. She and I are in Pittsburgh. How did you connect? What are you doing? Tell me all about it.
Yeah. So, I met Victoria virtually. It's really funny because now we're running a business together, and it was back in November of 2020. Okay. And I am a member volunteer for an organization called Blacks in IO Psychology. So Victoria and I, we're both industrial organizational psychologists, which is the science of human behavior in the workplace, basically. And this organization, we were going to put on a talk around allyship. And so they asked Victoria to come in, and then they wanted one of our members to speak. And I'm passionate, obviously, about diversity and inclusion and allyship as well. So that's how we met, was to both be presenters on this panel for this talk. And during that presentation, we realized that we were like yes-anding each other so much, like, yes, spot on. Oh, and this, and it was really great. We really got along well. And then after that, we connected. And from there, we partnered on a couple different things. She has her Better Humans at Work series on YouTube. And I came in to be a guest on that. And right around the time that she asked me to record that with her is when I was looking at opportunities. And she mentioned to me, she said, well, I am growing over here. I realize I need some help. She also realized that, being a white woman doing diversity and inclusion work, she was missing some things. And so she wanted to bring in a partner who could help fill the gaps that she couldn't. And so she asked, she said, have you thought about running a startup? Would you be interested in joining me? And I was like, I have never considered it. And I didn't think that's where any of this was going to go in my life at this stage. So took some time and reflected on it and agreed to come on board in April and officially started in mid-May. So the company itself, she started it in August of 2019. So it's 2 years old, but I am about 2 months old.
And you're 2 months old. I love it. Oh, what a great connection. What a great story. That's tremendous. So tell us all about Mattingly Solutions. What are you doing? What do you have coming up? Just give us the scoop.
Yeah, so Mattingly Solutions, we are a diversity, equity, and inclusion consulting firm, and we partner with our organizations that want to foster inclusion, and we do that through employee-centric measurement and allyship. So that's our, quick little insight into what we do. But to expand on that, you might be thinking, what does that even mean? We follow what we call our DEIX framework. And there's 5 different phases. And so as IO psychologists, we're really passionate about data and using measurement to make sure we're doing informed decisions with this work. And so we start by partnering with an organization, doing a deep dive or an audit into everything D&I at their organization. So looking at their employee database, their demographic base, through the employee life cycle, right? So how are you recruiting? How are you selecting? Who's being promoted? Turnover, all of that data. And then also getting the employee voice in there. So either using our proprietary Mattingly Inclusion and Belonging Assessment, so that survey, or if they have their own employee survey, we can look at that data as well and really just dive in and see how are employees feeling. Is it diverse? Do they feel welcomed, included, psychological safety, And once we have that, we then move to the second phase. And this is org service design. So helping that organization develop how they want to discuss and look at diversity, equity, and inclusion in their organization, develop a strategy around that, some goals, and then we provide them our DEIX roadmap. So here's the actionable next steps. of what you do to meet those goals that we just developed based on your data, and then in the third phase, that's our behavior change intervention. So we personally offer inclusion and allyship training and some others, but we're not solely a training company. So we partner with other people as well. Also, sometimes in the analysis phase, we'll realize they need to do a deeper dive into pay equity. So we have partners we'll direct them to for that and so on. We want to make sure they know where to go to meet their goals. And then the last phases, 4 and 5, it's centered around more measurement. So throughout the engagement, phase 4, it's collecting continuous feedback, whether that's feedback of the actions they're taking, feedback after events, pulse surveys to see, are we improving in the areas we want to improve? And then at the end, that 5th phase is redoing that original survey, re-looking at that roadmap and saying, did we have the impact we wanted? It doesn't make sense to just do the work and assume everything's okay. You have to reflect and be ready to adapt and change as needed, and iterate, and make sure you're making progress. So that's a quick view of our entire framework and what we could work a client through. But we also, depending on the client, maybe they only need us for a part of that, and we'll work with them on that as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there are so many terms in what you do.
Yes.
And I think that what I have seen, my own self, is that people scratch their heads, kind of think maybe that they know what a term means. Allyship, I'll just throw that one out. Like people maybe, I don't even know, come up with their own definition of it. But like, will you talk about some of these terms? I think it's important that people really educate themselves. You need to know what these are. How can you fix it? How can you work at it if you've made up your own definition and you're just flying by the seat of your pants and you really don't know, what you're actually working on?
Yeah. Well, what's interesting about that is we as a community even need to do, like, others like me in this space need to do a better job of using the same terminology and coming to a consensus. And in 2020, this space kind of exploded, right? There was a lot going on in society, and all of a sudden you had all of these people popping up and saying they were experts and they have their own theories. And they just want to name things, so they're naming things after themselves, or they want to, put their own twist on things so people know them as they created this. And it's not helpful in the end. At its core, there are some specific definitions that are really useful, and I'll dive into a couple of those, but it's getting into semantics so deeply. So for instance, and in the allyship conversation, we'll talk about that. You might have heard, instead of, an ally, I want to be an accomplice and things like that. And it's like, okay, you're getting so deep into semantics, you're losing the point of the work. Let's talk about the end goal, the target of these things. So again, leaning into allyship, that's something we're passionate about. The thing that turned people off of that and why they were looking for other ways to frame it is because of performative allyship. And that's when people just say, I call themselves an ally. I'm an ally. I want to support, the Black community. And we're like, well, cool, but that doesn't mean anything.
What are you doing?
You declaring that doesn't do anything for me as a Black woman, So the thing is that's performative allyship. Now that is an important distinction versus doing purposeful allyship, and truly being an ally. And how we define allyship at Mattingly Solutions is an ally and a partner working together towards social justice. So breaking that down, one, we focus on both the ally and the partner role in an allyship relationship. And you'll also notice it's more at the individual level. So how are you partnering with someone? Not just saying to the Black community. So it's developing a connection and then towards social justice. So there's action in there. You have to be working towards a goal together. And being meaningfully different from that person, right? And using that privilege to support them. So we like to use ourselves as an example. We practice what we preach, right? And like I mentioned, Victoria brought me in because she knew she couldn't do work in the Black community by herself as a white woman. And so there's times when I'm the partner, right? And she is my ally, and we are working together and figuring out how to be in that space. There's conversations she can have with white people that I can't. They'll hear better coming from another white person. But then there's times where it's good for me to come in and speak. And there's things I can say that she can't to, the Black partners, sure. And helping them figure out how to navigate, make the most out of a relationship, and really leaning into the fact of oftentimes when we talk about allyship, it is focused on, I'm just going to say it, white males, right? Like they're like, how can a white male help everyone else? Well, let's reframe that first. Like anyone can be an ally to anyone as long as you're meaningfully different from that person. And you are working towards helping them in some way. That action piece is what matters. And so we talk about that and reframe who allies are, but then, like I said, also the partner side. So making sure the partner knows it's not just about this white person being your savior, right? It's what are you going to do in that relationship? How can you be open? How can you be trusting, but also being protecting your psychological safety and finding boundaries? So those are the kinds of conversations in that space. So that was a little bit adjacent to the question you asked, but
no, that was perfect
about that.
Yeah, I know. I appreciate the deeper dive into that because it's irritating to see performative allyship and whatever else is happening with whatever other definitions people are coming up with and their own interpretation of how to do it. I'm glad you put it out there. I really think people need to hear that and think, take an introspective look. How can I really do this? How can I be a part of this? So that's great.
Yeah. So one other thing I want to throw out there just before I forget, I think diversity is pretty well defined. People get that one, right? It's more about your breakdown. It's that one is straight numbers. How diverse are you? The one thing we like to lean into with diversity, though, is highlighting that a person cannot be diverse. It is a group. Right. So people fall into this trap of saying like, oh, we have diversity or that person is diverse. And they're typically referring to an individual. Sure. So that's not how it works. It's at a group level. So, looking at the breakdown of a group, that's how you get to diversity. And then with equity, that's the one where, people get confused between equality and equity. And with equity, it's that some people start, we were actually just watching Ford versus Ferrari, and this kind of makes me laugh. There's this part where he's in a race and they think they tie, right? Because they all cross the finish line at the same time. However, one of them started further back. And so he actually won the race. He was the winner because he traveled a further distance. So when I was watching, my boyfriend's probably laughing in the other room because he's like in this sports movie and I'm sitting there and I'm like, this is a great example of equity. Like, this is great equity right there. He should have won that race because he did go further. And that's something that people miss. So really looking at that is it's not about, giving this person a leg up because for fun. They really earned it. They are starting further back. Sometimes they need a little extra push because they're trying to catch up to someone who was born with an extra push, So that's that space. And then just real quickly on the last one is inclusion. And our distinction there is that when it comes to inclusion, we talk of it as behaviors. It's inclusive behaviors. So people, when they think of it, a lot of times they're like, oh, it's very subjective. And it's not. Yes, those feelings of inclusion may be subjective to a person, but you have to perform inclusive behaviors to make them feel that way, to help with those feelings. And being inclusive behaviors, that's I'll be honest, right? Before we started this, we were on a little early prepping. You took the time to say, am I pronouncing your name correctly? And we practiced that and we talked talk through that together. That made me feel very welcome and ready to be here compared to people who just guess. So it can be things like that. Little things, not making assumptions. I was at a networking event yesterday and I would talk and I just said like, we, and then he was like, oh, your husband? And it kind of he's my boyfriend. So it got me right. one, they assume, okay, you must be married. And two, that it's a man. Like, yes, he is, but you don't know. And so it gives you pause, right? So it can be the smallest things to be inclusive. It's just changing the smallest of behaviors to make people feel like you respect them, and they're valued and heard. So yeah, those are just to touch on those other three quickly for you as well.
That's so important. I think when you give people bite-sized pieces, I can work on this a little bit today. I can, in my mind, stop, take a pause, and say, I'm going to make sure that I'm not just saying, hey, you guys. I think that's a big one.
That's one of mine. I'll be honest.
In the room. So, right. Just thinking, taking a second or two to think about what's coming out of your mouth right before you blurt it. And could I possibly offend anyone who's in here? What would be a general term or unassuming term that wouldn't hurt anyone's feelings? Would you want someone to say whatever you're going to say to you? Take a second to think about it. It's like going back to preschool when we learned, all these basics about how not to hurt people.
Yes, exactly.
Basic stuff. It really is. So great. Okay, so I want to talk about how people, companies, whomever can get in touch with Mattingly Solutions and get your help and go through those 5 steps, or like you said, maybe just a select steps or whatever help that they want to seek. How do they do that? How can they reach out?
Yeah. So like you said, we'll work with companies to go through all of our phases, or some of our clients, they may have some people on staff, but not complete bandwidth. And so we take a small piece and help them in different ways. If you're interested, you can reach out to us, go to the website. You can learn more about the offerings that I covered. There's also a lot of contact us buttons anywhere. So just feel free to click any of those and reach out. You can also reach out we're all over social media. So finding Mattingly Solutions on LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. We're on all of those, or reaching out directly to me, Sertrice at mattinglysolutions.com. That's my email. It's super easy to remember. So we're always willing. We do consultation. So if you aren't sure what you want and you want a free 30-minute consultation, again, just go to the website or DM us on any of the social media, and we'll set up a time to connect with you and figure out, where are you in your journey and what is the best way for us to help. Because again, we're not just here to take your money. That's what some of the people in this space are. It's just a money grab because it's a hot topic. We're really passionate about this, and we have studied it. So we will make sure and let you know exactly what you need, or point you again to a person who can get you what you need if it's not something that we offer. So yeah.
That's amazing. That's great. I love what you're doing. I love that we had this opportunity to chat and share, and that Victoria connected us. So just fantastic. Thank you so much again for your time. And folks, please, if you are a business or an organization, looking for help in the DEI space, get in touch with Mattingly Solutions. If you're a business or a nonprofit or an entrepreneur and you're looking to get the word out about what you're doing, reach out to me, Kate Bays. Find me on LinkedIn, and let's talk about doing something like we're doing here with Sertrice today. We could do the same. Okay. Well, thank you so much. Take care, and we'll see you next time.